Welcome to Mr. V's online classroom. I'm Mr. V, and I've been teaching math for 25 years. I hope that these lessons will help you understand the key concepts in math. Today we're going to learn the Pythagorean Theorem, Part 2. Remember, the Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Today we'll be solving for the legs, a and b. In Pythagorean Theorem Part 1, we learned how to solve for the hypotenuse. Now we're going to learn how to solve for the legs a and b. Remember, in a right triangle, the legs are the sides of the triangle that make up the right angle of the triangle. We can find them easily because there's a little square in the corner where they meet. Here's our triangle. Here are legs A and B. Leg A and leg B. Remember, the little box means right angle or 90 degrees. So remember, from the last video, we used the Pythagorean theorem to solve for c. So here's the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Our first step is to rearrange the formula. So that looks like this. We take the c squared and put it in front. C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. The second step is we take the square root of both sides of the equation. So we put a square root symbol over the c squared. Equals to the square root of a squared plus b squared. Remember, it acts like a parentheses. The final equation to solve for c, the hypotenuse, is the square root of c squared is c is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared. Now let's solve the Pythagorean theorem for a and b, the legs. Again, we start with the basic a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the Pythagorean theorem. Then, if we're solving for a, we subtract b squared from both sides. If you do it to one side, you have to do it to the other side. So you get a squared is equal to c squared minus b squared. Now the steps are the same as the other formula. Take the square root of both sides. So you get the square root of a squared is equal to the square root of c squared minus b squared. So the square root of a squared is a, and that's going to be equal to the square root of c squared minus b squared. So now let's solve one for b. We'll start with the original Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But this time we're going to subtract a squared from both sides. So we write down minus a squared on both sides of the equation, and we end up with b squared is equal to c squared minus a squared. So then again, same steps. We take the square root of both sides. We get the square root of b squared is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared. And that leads us to b is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared. So you now have the final formula for a on the left and the final formula for b on the right. So now let's use the formula we just solved for a and b on some triangles. Look at the first triangle on the left, and we're missing the a term. So we're going to use the a formula, and we write that down as a is equal to the square root of c squared minus b squared. Then we're going to replace the letters with the corresponding numbers. So a is equal to the square root of 5 squared minus 4 squared. That's c squared minus b squared. And that's equal to the square root of 25 minus 16, which is equal to the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 is 3. So a is equal to 3. Now let's try one for the b side. So we get b is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared. Now we just fill it in. b is equal to the square root of c squared, which is 7 squared, minus a squared, which is 4 squared. And that is equal to the square root of 49 minus 16. And then that is equal to the square root of 33. And if we use our calculator, the square root of 33 is 5.74, again rounding to the nearest hundredth. Remember, some of the answers will come out as a decimal, so I am rounding to the nearest hundredth. Check with your teacher on this. He might want you to round to the nearest tenth. Try some by yourself. Pause the video so you can sketch the triangles and solve the problem. Remember, answers can be in decimals. Okay, here's the first one. Pause here and recognize that we're missing the a term. So we write down the a formula. A is equal to c squared minus b squared. A is equal to the square root of 13 squared minus 12 squared. So a is equal to the square root of 169 minus 144. So a is equal to the square root of 25, which makes a, the side, equal to 5. Very good. Let's try another one. Okay, this time we're missing the b term, so we need to use the b formula. Pause here so you can sketch down the triangle. So we write down b is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared. So b is equal to 12 squared minus 6 squared. So b is equal to 144 minus 36. And b is equal to the square root of 108. And then that makes b equal to 10.39. Again, rounding to the nearest hundredth. Let's try one more. So here's this one. Now we're missing the c, so we can just go back to our regular c formula. Pause here. So we get c is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared. C is equal to 4 squared plus 12 squared. So c is equal to the square root of 16 plus 144, and that makes c equal to the square root of 160, and that means c is equal to 12.65. So we've come to the end of part 2, solving the Pythagorean theorem for the legs A and B. Please like my videos and subscribe to my channel so I can make more math videos for you. Hit the bell notification so you know when those new math videos will come up. I will have one more on the Pythagorean theorem. Make sure to check out my other math videos. Thank you.